Hello again, everybody. This is Dan Clouser, and welcome back to the Journey of My Mother's Son podcast. Today I'm joined with Adrianne Hart, who is a wellness advocate, hypnotist, and host of the Get Well With Me podcast. Adrianne, thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Looking forward to the conversation. I just want to add that Adrianne's one of those guests where we know each other before the podcast. We met through a mutual connection, Justin Schenck, back at his Growth Now Live movement event back in May. We've stayed in touch. We're actually part of Justin's Growth Now community as well. So we see each other on kind of a weekly basis. Sometimes I miss some of the calls and I'm not there, but we've been able to stay in touch. And Adrianne's just doing some incredible work out there, and I wanted to have her on the show because she's one of those people who's just putting positive vibes out into the universe. So before we get started in the conversation, Adrianne, just tell my listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do before we get started.
Sure. Well, I'm Adrianne Hart. I am the host of the Get Well With Me podcast. I've been a hypnotist for just about 20 years now. And the message of my heart is to empower others to recognize their subconscious mind and use it for their benefit. It's almost like our hidden secret superpower. And what I do on my podcast is I teach people self-hypnosis. I teach them a little bit more about how their subconscious works. And I provide free audios. Hundreds of people every night listen to my voice when they drift off to sleep to help them achieve a particular goal. Sometimes falling asleep is the goal. If sleep eludes you, especially sometimes when we need it most, I feel like that's when it can elude us the most. So I have a recording to help you drift into a deep sleep. I have several for weight loss, for quit smoking. I just released an episode today about unlocking your inner genius, helping you to remember names, have better memory, learning, and recall. So if someone has a problem, I truly believe that the solution is inside of you already, and we just need to open the door to bring it to the surface. So that's what I do.
Love it. I love it. And yeah, before we get started in the conversation, I also want to thank you because you are one of those people who is always encouraging me. You're always commenting on my posts and liking them, and that makes a world of difference. You'll never understand what that means to me. So I want to thank you sincerely for that little bit of cheerleading that you do for me out there on social media. I really appreciate that. So I think a lot of people, when they are talking about or trying to understand hypnosis, they kind of think it's like this woohoo thing, that you see at the carnival, somebody, being hypnotized and, all of a sudden they're in their underwear for no reason or
Right.
something like that. So, try to break down some of those stereotypes of what hypnosis is and isn't for my listeners.
Right. Well, often hypnosis is in the same category as magic. And I always say that's because it works like magic. It's incredible, the power of the mind and what it can do. And oftentimes people say, are you going to turn me into a chicken or something along those lines? But I love stage hypnosis because it does offer the opportunity for, they say bad press it's still press. So it does raise an awareness for hypnosis. So when you see someone do hypnosis for entertainment, that's exactly what it is. It's hypnosis for entertainment, and it can get very silly. But it does demonstrate the power of the mind. And essentially, hypnosis is just focused attention. And a lot of times, someone can confuse the phenomena of trance with hypnosis. So trance is essentially that very natural state that we go into all day long. When you see someone just kind of zone out for a minute, maybe you've seen someone like wave their hands and say, come back, Earth to Dan, where did you go there? That's trance. It's very natural. It's a relaxed, focused state. It happens while we're driving. It happens while we're watching TV. Some of the ways that you might notice when you fall into trance is that time goes by very quickly. You watch a movie and then suddenly it's over, or you're very involved in the work that you're doing. It happens to me sometimes when I'm editing a podcast. All my intention is just so laser focused. And next thing I know, I forgot to eat, or I missed an appointment that I was supposed to Zoom in for. So whenever we get into almost that flow state, that's very similar to trance, but hypnosis is, it's a tool. It's a tool that we can use to plant seeds in our mind. If we want to liken our minds to a garden, we don't just go to the garden and get what we need. We don't go to the garden and say, give me a watermelon. The garden looks back at us and says, plant a seed. Plant a seed. And so hypnosis is an opportunity, with or without trance. I mean, there's conversational hypnosis. Anytime that you're using your mind to access your imagination with the intention of creating a real result in your life, that's hypnosis. So planting seeds of health and wellness, that was originally, when I started my podcast, that was just the message of my heart. We had gone through a recent health transformation, my husband and I, my husband Greg, that you met at the event, and it was such a dramatic transformation in our energy levels, in our health, in health conditions, that just dissolved when we started to set our mind towards health and wellness. I mean, we can drive through the drive-through in a trance. We don't even know. It's just, I mean, I used to eat Wendy's sometimes twice a day, lunch and dinner, and that's okay. I mean, I'm a fan. Who doesn't love Wendy's? But essentially, when we're going through these habits and we're going through them unconsciously, they do produce a result in our life. And it's really important to recognize that the seeds that we plant in our mind, they do produce fruit. That happens positively. That happens negatively. And it's also really important to know that if we're not being intentional about programming our own mind, then we're haphazardly allowing someone else to do it for us. At every moment, our mind is being influenced by the stimulus in the environment around us. So we can be intentional about choosing our environment. We can be intentional about surrounding our people with those encouraging cheerleaders that are rooting for us. We can be intentional about nourishing our bodies, about moving our bodies. We can be intentional about getting good quality sleep, about looking for deficiencies in our life and making those upgrades. So what is a habit? A habit is just an unconscious action. It's something that's become automatic. And when we can recognize the habits that are no longer serving us well and choose to upgrade them, that is a fabulous application for hypnosis. So getting back to your question, stage hypnosis for entertainment or clinical hypnotherapy, clinical hypnosis, that is hypnosis with an intention for a positive change. So hopefully that clears up the difference there.
Yeah, and I think, people really don't understand how powerful our mind is, and how, not having a healthy mind leads to, hundreds and thousands of other issues down the
Yes.
road. So if you can just expand on that a little bit, as far as how important, a positive mindset is, and really, how that affects literally every other part of our being.
Sure. Well, you are probably familiar in your audience with our reticular activating system. Essentially, we may be passing a certain car, maybe like let's say a Toyota Camry, every day, never notice it. Then when we start car shopping and we decide, oh, I'm looking for a Toyota Camry, I would really like one in silver, we can't stop seeing them. They are suddenly everywhere. And the only difference between something being almost invisible to us and then seeing and noticing something is that reticular activating system. It's as if our mind is an instrument and we want to tune it to the music that we want to play. So it is extremely important to be intentional about that. And I know that you and your wife, Sandy, are people who live in a positive mindset. You design your life. you are where you are because you chose to be there. You chose to be free. You chose to travel. When I first approached you at the Growth Now movement, you and your wife were enjoying some appetizers, and I was like, I need to know these people. I could just I could feel your approachable energy. And I remember asking you, I said, so I was kind of joking, saying my husband and I hope to one day live the dream like you and Sandy. And it is kind of a joke because we joke about it all the time. We always say, if we keep this up, we're going to be living in a van down by the river, that old Saturday Night Live. And we joke about that a lot, but in the most glorious way. Like, to us, that does sound like freedom. And I remember asking you, what are some of your favorite places? And then I went into, what are some of the worst places you've ever visited? And when I say that you and Sandy could not produce one, you could not think of anything negative. You're like, we love the community. It doesn't matter. Every campground, we meet friends. Your mind is tuned to the life that you want to live. And that's all that you see. I mean, you literally could not produce one negative location or experience to share with me because that is not what your mind is tuned to. So being intentional about designing our life, recognizing that we're all facing a direction and we're moving in that way. So I hope that answers your question.
No, I love that. And I never really, thought about what you said there, but it is true. I mean, if you're you find what you're focusing on. So if
Yes,
you're looking for good and good in people, you're going to find it. And if you're
that's
looking for
right.
bad and bad in people, you're going to find it. And
That's right.
let's face it, the bad is swirling all around us. You turn on the TV and the news, and it's one of the reasons why I try to avoid watching the news at all costs. Is
Same.
that is all they're throwing at you, just negative, negative, negative. But if you really concentrate on it, there are so many good people out there in the world, and I've said this on many of my podcasts in the past, and I'll say it again here: is that it does not matter what color these people are, what their sexual orientation is, what their religious backgrounds are, what their political standpoints are. Like, there are just good people out there if you're looking for them.
That's right.
And by the same token, there's bad people out there if you're looking for them. So I think if you train your mind to constantly be looking for those good people and looking, at the positive things, you're really manifesting it
Yes.
in a way. So I know that's something else that a lot of people think is kind of like a woohoo topic, talking about manifestation and stuff like that. But I think it's something that is absolutely 100% real and accurate, and that you can manifest what you want. So tell me your feelings on manifestation as well.
Sure. I truly believe that the life that we live, everything that we see externally is a mirror of what's going on inside of us. So when we set our mind upon peace, we experience peace. Simply just the power of saying words like wonderful, beautiful, love, empowerment, strength. Those words, you can actually feel them affecting you. And the opposite is true, right? So some people, they think that happiness is selfish, but ultimately, happiness is just the natural result of living out the desires of your heart, of righting your wrongs, of forgiving others. So when we can clear the way, kind of clear out everything that's blocking us, the number one thing that I hear from people is that they're stuck. Whether they're trying to make a change in their life, or they're trying to break a habit or build a new habit or build a business or up level their health or achieve their healthy weight, they feel stuck. And I feel like being stuck is almost like a kink in the hose to manifestation, because when everything is open, we naturally produce those beautiful results in our life. So when I was much younger, I was very empowered to realize this at a young age, like at about 19 years old. And I remember reading, some interesting books and getting on the self-development journey and just deciding ahead of time that I would not ever live in a victim mindset. If we find ourselves blaming others, then we're not in a position to manifest. Something that I often say is that people who say, I can't catch a break or I never catch a break, they wouldn't know if they caught a break. Their mind is not tuned to the break. If you believe that life has to be hard, it will be hard. If you think of life as using the law of non-resistance, like water, it flows. It comes up against a wall, it flows around it. At no time does, a river not flow. It doesn't matter if there's debris in the way, it just flows. So when we can set our mind towards a destination, we can automatically flow to it. And I believe that they are some really important keys to manifestation. Someone who says Murphy's Law, it's like, that's not a law. That's a terrible mindset. Like, that's a mindset that can negatively affect your health, your relationships. Constantly expecting the worst is absolutely the worst. So yeah, manifestation, it's everything. It's everywhere. And people who don't believe in it are just not paying attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to go back to something you said about, happiness is selfish. And, one of the things that I've come to understand in recent years is that many times selfishness is one of the most selfless things
Mm.
you can do, because if you're not happy and your mind's not in a positive place, you can't give to others. And,
Mhm.
you truly can't fill from an empty cup. And, I kind of, for the bulk of my life, um, I was always, giving to others, and I still give to others, but I rarely ever took time for myself up until, probably the last 4 or 5 years, right before we started on this literal journey that we're on now.
Mhm.
And as I look back and reflect now, I was really just kind of, you know, dying a slow death, even though I was doing, you know, a lot of good and, changing a lot of kids' lives and stuff like that. There was just no time whatsoever for me to recoup and refill my own cup. And, it reminds me of a phrase my mom used to use when she was still around, where she said, sometimes you have to do what you have to do for you.
Mm.
Um, so going back to that kind of, happiness is selfish component. You know, tell me a little bit about your thoughts and how important it is for that self-care and filling your own cup, and, how that then will manifest into being able to help others even more than
Sure.
trying to do it from an empty cup.
Absolutely. Well, like you, with the loss of a parent, it caused some really great reflection. And um, in 2016, my dad passed away unexpectedly, and it was traumatic to watch and to heal from. It was, a journey that really caused me to look at my life and realize that I was running myself ragged, and I didn't recognize it right away. The very same month that he died, I continued to just press on my goals, and um, I didn't give myself proper time to grieve. And I eventually, about a year later, hit some really severe burnout. And it caused me to kind of put my money where my mouth is and say, yes, I need to design my life. Yes, I need to make space on my calendar for myself. Yes, I need to make sure that, ultimately, when you really know what your values are, it's easy to make decisions, right? I used to be that yes person. Hey, Adrianne, do you want to do this? Do you want to go here? Sure, okay. And I didn't realize that when I was saying yes to someone else or to something else, that oftentimes that meant that I was saying no to me. Oftentimes that meant that I was saying no to my family. Oftentimes that meant to saying no to what I really wanted because I was saying yes to someone else. And for me, self-care is not so much about going to the spa or going on vacation or making sure that I meditate. Self-care is knowing my values and then just living according to them. And especially with hypnosis being something that is easily misunderstood, that is often considered woo-woo, I have to stay in alignment with my values. I'm a Christian. I believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I don't participate in things that are, in no way have I have no intention of ever dabbling in the darkness. I'm a person that follows the Lord, that allows the goodness that he has provided to flow through me. I recognize the power of the mind as the ultimate gift. I recognize that we were made in his image to be able to create, to share, to love, to heal. So self-care, rather than being a set of action steps or a routine that I have in the morning, it's more keeping my values in front of me and living within them. And I could have went into a spiel about, I wake up at 6 a.m. and make green smoothies because I do that. But it's not about that. And it's so easy to kind of get lost in the woods when we talk about self-care. Everyone has to do what's right for them. And for someone, perhaps sleeping in and getting extra rest is right for them. Perhaps just a glass of water and coffee in the morning is right for them. So one of the things with my podcast and just my philosophy in life, it's excellence, not perfection. It's about recognizing the individuality and the beautiful uniqueness of each person. And truly, again, just to wrap up, self-care is knowing your values and living within them, not being afraid to say no to what's not in alignment with you.
Yeah, I love that. And Vince Lombardi used to have a quote that he would say, we strive for perfection, hoping to achieve excellence.
I love that.
I think that's really and he kind of further expanded on it a little bit, saying, knowing that we can never be perfect, but if we end up being excellent, like that's enough. I kind of messed up the second part, but the first part is on point. And I think that is so important that, I like what you said about, we're all individuals and we have to find what works for us. I mean, there really is no cookie cutter approach to this. You got to find what works for you. And I know even going back to when I was in, youth sports and coaching baseball and stuff like that, there were so many, coaches and instructors there who would try to tell these kids, that this is the way to do it. This is the only way to hit a baseball. This is the only way, completely throwing the individualism out, but yet if you watch a Major League Baseball game, through the course of any game, there's, 18 completely different batting stances. And, there's some similarities at points, which, you can't really deviate from, but how you get there can all be different. And that was one of the things I always strive to do with my players in that sense, is that, look, you're individuals. So you got to find out what's going to work for you. Even like when I used to go to coaching clinics and stuff like that, I would take little nuggets from one seminar that I went to, little nuggets from another seminar that I went to, little nuggets from another seminar I went to, and applied them to how I was teaching. And I always said that the game of baseball is always a metaphor for life. And what you just said correlates perfectly. Is that those same principles that I used to coach the game, to apply to my own life, is so important. And again, understanding that, God made us all as individuals and all with our own free will. And we have to, find what works for us. I think that's so important because there's so many people out there who, hear them talking and, it's like, this is the recipe for success. This is the recipe for good health. This is the recipe for fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's so not true. We all just have to find our own space. So at what point in your life did you really realize that your individualism is what made you, you're perfect and excellent you?
Oh, thank you. Well, I'd say it was after 2020. So when the pandemic started, I was on a cruise, like legitimately, I guess the worst place you could possibly be at the start of a pandemic. They called us like the floating petri dish. Um, so when we got off the cruise, and because I don't turn the TV on when I'm on vacation, I didn't know what was happening. I did start to feel like there was something happening, but I didn't know what it was. And when we got off the ship, I started getting all these phone calls from my sister and my family members telling me that like everything was canceled and get toilet paper. So I was so confused. Like I was just in paradise, you know, on the ocean, and now I have to worry about stocking up toilet paper, and I didn't really understand why. So that was day one of the pandemic. But during that time, I really decided I would use that time to kind of focus in on my podcast. And if you go back and listen to really old episodes, they're kind of the opposite of what I'm describing now, because they were like, hey, I'm alleviating stress this way. It's a good way for you to do it too. It was, hey, this is the greens powder that I'm putting into my smoothie, and it's going to make you feel good too. And I did kind of feel that I had like cracked the code on happiness and wellness, and I wanted to share things really specifically. But because I had time, because I had this space, I was able to allow myself to grow, allow myself to change, and to recognize that all of the changes that I made were in my mind, right? It had nothing to do with what type of fruit was going into my blender. It had nothing to do with the brand of blender that I was using. It had nothing to do with whatever essential oil I was diffusing. It had to do with the intention that I set. And having been a hypnotist for so many years and having used self-hypnosis for so many years, I was thankful to have that time, to have that space to recognize truly what my real message was. And it was a message of mind, not so much a message of body. And when you flip a perception to the message of mind, it would be impossible not to recognize everyone's uniqueness. Yes, we have a common thread. Yes, it is helpful to model success, of course. Yes, it's helpful to find people who are where you want to be and perhaps emulate what they have done. But to believe that there is a certain formula that is a one size fits all, I needed that space during the pandemic to work through that on my own. And I'm so thankful for podcasting because it was a safe place that I could grow. It was a safe place that I could share the message in my heart that was evolving over time. So it was during the space that was given to me in the pandemic, because essentially everything slowed down. And I had been living a life where, I was in the car a lot. I'm driving. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a sister. I'm a professional. I had, places to be, meetings to attend. And I just kept going and going and going, and not having that time and that space to focus in on really what is that message that's pouring out of my heart, to not get caught in the weeds, so to speak. So it was that scary, beautiful 2 years that we had there.
Yeah. What were you podcasting prior to the pandemic, or did you start your podcast in the pandemic?
I was. Yeah. And you can really see the transition. My previous episodes were much more specific. I almost felt like I was trying to convince instead of influence. So, and that's okay. I mean, that's where I was at the time. And that's the really neat thing about podcasting is it can grow with us. It's a personal platform, right? I can have guests on, I can speak solo, I can put a guided meditation up there. So I'm really thankful for that, for the opportunity.
Yeah. What made you get into podcasting in the first place?
I loved listening to them. I absolutely love listen. I love to consume audio content. I love to consume audio books. And as much as I love to consume audiobooks, that's all that there actually was. I was that person that drove around with a lot of like Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, cassette tapes, CDs, Norman Vincent Peale, psycho-cybernetics. Like I was consuming like Brian Tracy, just so much positive content that was, that's all that there was. And interestingly enough, after my dad died, I was at a family reunion and someone there said, I heard your dad on a podcast. Now you can imagine, right? Like that was jarring for me if someone said that to you. Like the way that, first I want to say, the way you honor your mother with your platform and your life is truly beautiful. So in 2016, I'm at this family reunion and a cousin of my dad's like, I heard your dad on a podcast. And I'm like, that's weird. Okay. Cause like, he's not with us anymore, but it was a replay of a radio show. He was on like a PBS, I can't think of it right now, but some type of a radio show about gardening. And he called in to ask about the wood bees that were, eating up the front porch. And it was the first time that I ever downloaded a podcast. I remember I downloaded the Stitcher app and I looked really hard for this particular episode. And I had to listen to a lot of episodes to find the one. And when I heard my dad's voice, it was really worth it. Like it gets me choked up. Like, because, I don't know if I've actually ever recognized that my love for listening to and producing podcasts came from that moment that I could hear my dad's voice again. And, in that episode that I heard him on, he talked about how really our only combat against the wood bees was sending the kids out with tennis rackets, and it was just cute to hear him talk about us and the house and all of those things. So in 2016, I downloaded Stitcher and I quickly found my way to entrepreneurial podcast. And I started listening to EO Fire with John Lee Dumas. And I listened to his daily podcast every single day. And I kind of imagined myself being on his podcast one day. That's no longer a dream of mine, but it was like, I kind of put myself in the seat of the person being interviewed and thought, one day I'm going to add value like that. At that time, I hadn't thought of producing a podcast, but that is where my love for consuming podcasts began. And just to think that you can be interested in a topic and type it into a podcast search and get a deep dive, right? It's not a 5-minute YouTube video. It's a conversation, and it's a conversation with people who are interested, passionate, and have experience with whatever that topic is. So it literally cracked open my brain in ways that I didn't know were possible. And once I realized that I could use it to share hypnosis, that was just next level. Because when I started doing this, when I was just 19 years old, I wanted to create hypnosis recordings and share them. And on my bulletin board that's right in front of me, I actually have the very first one I ever made. And it says Wellness, Revised, October 16th, 2001. And it's just like an old, CD that I don't even know what kind of technology I was using back then, but it was, it's been the passion of my heart for so long. And suddenly it's easy, right? Like suddenly you just hit record and you just hit publish. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but not really. You just hit record and you hit publish and it goes out all across the whole world. It's so cool when I have people comment on my the YouTube version of my podcast, and people from everywhere. Sometimes I have to hit C translation to know what they're saying. It's awesome. So yeah, thank you for taking me back to that moment. I feel like that question just breathed life into my spirit.
That's cool. And boy, I'll tell you what, to be able to hear my mom's voice again would be an incredibly special thing. So I can definitely relate to what you must have felt um, when you heard your dad's voice. That's pretty special for sure.
Thank you.
So, what was it that got you involved in hypnosis in the first place? What drew
Such
you
a good
into that?
question. So it was just like everything in life, right? It's nothing that was uh, on my radar. I'll say that. So my sister, she's younger than me, and I'm the oldest of five kids. So I feel like when you're the oldest, you just automatically take on a little bit more responsibility. And I, to this day, like I love my siblings so much. They are my best friends. You know, friends will come and go and fade, but family, especially brothers and sisters, it's like they know you so deeply. And my love for my sister is what led me to hypnosis. Her teeth were busted looking, like they were just growing in directions that teeth should not grow, and she needed to go to the orthodontist. She needed to go to the dentist, and she was scared to death. She had had an experience where she was at the dentist, and he said, look over there at the bird, and then he kind of came in with the needle to give her the Novocaine. But she didn't fall for that. And she saw the needle and she kicked the dentist, and she got banned from the dentist. And clearly she was traumatized, my mother and the dentist. So this trauma that was more emotional, it was like the way that she processed the event. She felt that she couldn't trust the dentist office, and it was a non-negotiable for her. I tried everything. I mean, I considered myself to be an influential person even at that time. As a younger person, I thought for sure I could logically convince her that having her teeth straightened out would give her the best advantage in life, and I couldn't. And I was sharing this woe with a friend of mine, and she goes, "Oh, well, my mom can fix that." And I was like, who says that? Like, that made no sense to me. And I was like, well, how could your mom possibly, what is she, a dentist? That's really nice. Like, I don't understand. She's like, no, she's a hypnotist. She works with that kind of stuff all the time. That's no problem. So I ended up taking my sister to this hypnotist. And when I say, like, she was cured instantly, I mean, instantly. The incurable, the stubborn, the non-negotiable. Not only did she make her appointment for the dentist, I went with her. I brought the hypnosis recording that was supposed to support her. I was like all ready to just do whatever I could. I didn't want her to run out of the chair. I was like, I'll be with you. It's okay. She told the dentist, I don't need Novocaine. She had her cavity filled, and I was amazed. To this day, she still is completely comfortable going to the dentist. And the change was so dramatic. It was so instantaneous and surprising and miraculous that I had to know more. But ultimately, where I really decided that it was the journey that I wanted to take with my life, and it was the modality that I wanted to share with others, was when I experienced it for myself. I was 19 years old. I had just gotten married to Greg, who you met. We were on our honeymoon in Jamaica, and it was fabulous. I mean, it was the first time I was at an all-inclusive resort. So as a young kid, not even old enough to drink yet, but, in Jamaica, right, I was like an adult. I was married. There was just an abundance of food and entertainment. Everything was wonderful. And I find I'm laying not even on the bed, but on the couch in the hotel room, alone, suffering in pain, unable to move, completely incapacitated by back pain. And I just happen to have this cassette with me that hypnotist lady gave me. She showed me a wall of cassettes, and she says, just pick out two things you think apply to you. So one of them was back pain, which I had been suffering with for quite some time. I pop in this cassette, and it was just a relaxing guided meditation. I felt better just from the relaxation. But then suddenly we get to this part in the cassette recording where he's like kind of causing me to imagine the moment that I may have stored some emotional pain in my body. And it was clear. It was crystal clear. I had felt so guilty that I was enjoying my best life. I felt guilty for being happy. I felt like I had almost abandoned my brothers and sisters because they were at home in New Jersey and they were going through some really hard things, and maybe they weren't totally okay. And it was like, it's not that I was punishing myself so much as I wasn't allowing myself to live. And being that I could see this so clearly, laying on this, I can just see it in my mind. I was laying on this pink couch, listening to this cassette tape, and it flashed in my mind like this moment that I felt so bad that they were not okay. You know, I could just see myself driving away from my family home, you know, back to my happy little life, and just feeling like I wanted to save them. I wanted to rescue them out of the turmoil that was happening at home. And I couldn't do that. So essentially, I felt free, not because the situation was fixed, but I felt a level of self-compassion and recognizing what was really causing my pain allowed me to practically levitate off that couch and go outside and enjoy the most beautiful day. I'll never forget. There was all the kinds of crazy Jamaican music playing outside, and people were playing volleyball in the pool. And I was like, yes, it's okay. I'm going to live. I'm going to live in this moment. It's safe to be here now. It's okay. And that freedom, like essentially getting back a part of myself, getting back permission to really live again, recognizing after a little bit of time that I could be more of a help and more of a healer to my family when I was allowing myself to live, when I was giving myself permission to be happy and to love well. And again, it was so instantaneous and it was so effective that it was on that trip in August of the year 2000 that I knew that when I got home, I was going to get certified and I was going to share this with the world. So that's how it all began for me.
It's cool. And it kind of goes back to that not being able to fill from an empty cup. So you wouldn't really be able to help your family, regardless of what they were going through, if your mind and body wasn't in the right spot
Right.
as well. So
That's right.
I love that. That's definitely, you know, reaffirming what we've spoken about already.
For sure.
So,
For sure.
anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't talked about already? We've covered such a wide variety of topics. Anything that we missed in the world of hypnosis and positive thinking?
I'd say don't be afraid, but do be cautious, right? So I wouldn't recommend going to a hypnotist that doesn't align with your values, right? So, so if you have a change that, and I'm speaking to your audience, if you have a change that you want to make in your life, if you have a habit that you want to upgrade, if you want to reduce stress, if you want to dissolve anxiety, if you want to experience more energy, if you want to finally set your mind as the GPS to your goals and find your own unique way of traveling to that destination, don't be afraid to give it a try. Perhaps tune into the Get Well With Me podcast and see if I can help you sleep at night. Hundreds of people every night listen to my weight loss episodes, and I know that when they are tuning their minds to their healthy weight, that they automatically find themselves then making the healthy choices to get there. So don't be afraid to experiment with the power of your mind. It is the greatest gift. It doesn't have to be a secret. It's not woo-woo to understand and to believe that your mind influences your health and your life.
I love that. Love that. So, Adrianne, how do people find you? Where can they subscribe to the podcast? Where can they, find you on the internet and potentially engage your services?
Sure. I like to keep things super easy. So it's adriannehart.com, and that's ADRIANNEHART, adriannehart.com. And if you go to adriannehart.com, then you'll be able to find my YouTube. You'll be able to find links to my podcast wherever that you like to listen to it, whether that's iTunes or Spotify or iHeartRadio, or all of those links will be available there. And my group hypnosis session, Wellness Wednesday, I invite everyone here. It's a free trial. So that gives you a whole month worth of weekly sessions where you can begin to tune your mind to the life that you really want. And we rotate topics. So anything that has to do with health, wellness, motivation, dissolving anxiety, we rotate those topics. And the group is growing, and it's really fun to just zoom in. Just zoom in and allow me to plant some seeds of health and wellness into your mind. So adriannehart.com.
Love it. Love it. All right. So that brings us to our final question. And as you know, the subtitle of the podcast is Many Little People in Many Little Places, which comes from the opening lyrics of a Michael Franti song, Gloria, which go, when many little people in many little places do many little things, then the whole world changes. What's one of the little things that you do to make the world a little bit better place?
Well, I just want to say amen to that, right? It is all of those little things that I know you just had an incredible interview on your podcast. You were just at the music festival. So I know all that music is just alive in your heart right now. Two things. I go to bed each night with hypnosis or affirmations in my earbuds every night. So wherever I feel that I need to upgrade my thinking, I tune into an audio to program my mind. Sleep is a very naturally hypnotic time right before bed and that early sleep. So recognizing that that is an incredible time to program my mind, that helps me to be the best person that I can be to serve others better. So, and in addition to that, is waking up in the morning with gratitude and praying for everyone who I love. So yeah, the nightcap of the day and starting my morning.
I love that. Love that answer. Really enjoyed the conversation. I love the fact that you took the time out to join me on the podcast, and wish you nothing but the best of luck. This is a great conversation. I think we probably could have went on for another hour, but
me too. Yeah, I enjoyed it too.
But this was a lot of fun. And for folks out there listening, be sure to check out my other podcasts and blogs at journeymymotherson.com or danclouser.com. And while you're there, pick up a copy of my most recent book, The Journey of My Mother's Son, Volume 1. Adrianne, again, appreciate you taking the time. Really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thanks for having me, Dan.
You bet.